this is for you, Brian. This clean start is for you for the edit of the audio podcast. So,
yes, love it. All right. Well, yeah. Welcome everybody. What we're doing here today is answering questions. I always have a lot of questions for you, Chris. This has been going on for a while. I think last time we talked was when you did your patron hangout, which, by the way, everybody should join Chris's Patreon. And we were talking in there, and I had a question for you. And that question was, Chris, what gives you the right?
To what?
I don't know. It's just felt good to ask that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any rights.
No, but you've been flying. You've been releasing videos. You've been making a lot of stuff. And I know you got some other things in the works. But maybe start with an update. For you.
Yeah, thanks. For sure. I have been flying a little more than usual, and I'm about to fly a lot more than usual in the next few weeks. We took a trip to, where did I go? I went to Charleston. I went to the Outer Banks a few weeks ago, and then went to Charleston a few weeks ago, West Virginia, which is only about a 95-mile or so trip. That's actually the video that's going to release this weekend. Patrons have it now. And it was kind of an interesting one in that Kevin Webb and I were going to take our Cherokee 235 down. He's going to drop me off because I was going to stay in Charleston for 2 weeks and come back. But when he got back, he was flying it that morning, and he got back, and there was a problem I found in pre-flight with one of the landing gear. One of the bolts was sheared off, and so I had 130 pounds of stuff to take with me, and so we had to do some and it was 75 degrees. So we were calculating, trying to figure out, can we take the Cessna out and get out of there and all that. So we piddled around making that decision for a while and eventually decided to do it. And I'm really glad we did. We had a good time, and it was a cool experience. Got to spend some time under the IFR hood and do some instrument flying. And so it was a good experience. That video will come out on Sunday for the general public. Yeah, so that was good. And then obviously, some of you have heard about, not everyone, we have a kind of a fly-in experience coming up in a few weeks in the end of April, where Brian and I think 3 others are going to fly to the Outer Banks of North Carolina and stay in our beach house and go exploring to some really cool places in and around the Outer Banks / Virginia area while we're down there, and shoot some video and eat some good food. And
you know what I'm looking forward to the most with that trip, by the way?
What's that?
It's going to be the first trip in the history of aviation where everything goes exactly according to plan.
Well, until just now. Now you said that. I don't know why you would say that, but yes, that is the plan. David, I see David's in here.
Yeah, David's here. Yep.
David's in. David Moscardelli's in here tonight. He's coming down with us. Another, good group of people. Josh is in here. Cirrus Pilot we met this week. He's a new patron. We had him in the hangout earlier this week. Cirrus Pilot from Pittsburgh. So it's good to see everybody. So make sure you do ask questions in the chat. This whole hour is going to be Q&A and just answering questions that come up from the chat. But what about you? You haven't been flying as much as but you were way outpacing me there for a while, and now you're not.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to, well, you mentioned the Outer Banks trip, right? So that's coming up. I have to budget what I'm doing, and so there's that factor. But there's also just the plane that I primarily fly that is very economical to fly has gone down for a 100-hour, and it's been a fairly involved one that is taking some time. So the plane's been down for almost 3 weeks. I haven't flown for a little over 3 weeks. I am going to be flying the plane that I trained in, which I also love that plane. I kind of miss flying it. And it is conveniently, at the airport right by my house. So I am going to be flying on Friday and then also on Monday, hopefully, just to kind of keep at it. But ultimately, I've been kind of saving up a little bit because I'm about to have the plane for about 8 or 9 days. So our trip is a long weekend, Thursday through Sunday. but for the sake of planning and for the inevitable, who knows what's going to happen. And I'm coming, I think, from further away than anybody else is. So, it's not like the craziest trip in the world for normal experienced pilots, but for me, it's kind of, it's like setting the world record for me. So, so for me, I added 3 days of buffer on the front and 3 days of buffer on the back. And if I have extra time and everything's just great, then maybe I can do some detouring or go to my hometown for a while or visit some other people or something, but ultimately I have time, a huge buffer to sort of either, wait out weather and not worry about things or whatever. I promise I won't end up at your beach house 3 days early.
Well, the other 8 people who were there would be surprised.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's kind of been my deal, is just I've been doing a lot of trip planning and budgeting and making sure I got all that, and then doing minimum things to keep myself flying. But have definitely gone the longest I think I've ever gone, which is a little over 3 weeks since I started training. I think there was maybe one spell I had when I was training where one of those sort of trifectas of instructor out of town, maintenance, weather. I think I had another 3 week delay or so. But ultimately, it's a lot easier to take now, right? Like right. When you're a student, when you're halfway through it, it's 3 weeks feels like a year.
Exactly. Very cool. It should be a good trip, really. I think we're still kind of nailing down the plans of what we're trying to do. Though obviously we'll have tons of social media content, and I'm hoping to get at least 2 or probably 3 videos out of the trip. Where I think a couple of us are bringing drones, so we're gonna make some intentional stops to like shoot some drones. I don't have any good drone footage. It's just so hard to do, when it's just pretty impractical in most cases. But these are the perfect opportunities to shoot drones of the airplanes, like untowered fields by the beach, like great scenery behind them. Like these will be the perfect opportunities to responsibly, operate drone filming close around airplanes.
What drone do you have? Are you a certified Part 107 operator?
Yeah, I am.
And I am also. What is your drone of choice? We never really talked about this.
Yeah, so I use a DJI Phantom Pro 2 or Phantom 2 Pro.
Mavic 2 Pro.
No, Phantom.
Phantom, old school. Okay.
It's still to this day, of even the newer Mavics and stuff, it's still my favorite in terms of the balance of image quality versus size.
Yeah.
I just really I've been happy with the sensor size of the camera that they put on. They're the one that put the 1 inch, the 1 inch sensor on that camera, and with good ND filters. And
are you sure it's not a Phantom 4?
I'm sorry, Phantom 4 Pro.
Okay, because the Phantom 2 are like the ones where you had to like.
Sorry, Phantom 4 Pro Plus. Okay. The Phantom 4 Pro Plus.
Got it. Yes.
With the bright, the super bright nit screen embedded in the controller. Yeah, it's a Phantom 4. Sorry, I don't know why I said Phantom 2. So, but it's, no, that's my favorite and still is. I mean, there's certainly better ones out there, but we've had it for a few years now, and it's still, it's competitive picture. It looks pretty good. So what about you? I know you have a. Do you still have your big boy, or did you sell your big boy?
I finally sold it. I had it for years though. The Inspire 2 with the X5S, and I had multiple. I had the 45 millimeter. I got to the point where the kind of gigs I was doing, that was the minimum viable equipment. So yeah, but it's one of those things where they just won't make a new one. And I bought it when it came out 4 years ago, and just got to the point where it's like, if I don't get rid of this now, I'm never going to get anything for it. So that's what I did. Yeah. There's a Sony system that I really like, that allows you just to mount a DSLR like this, straight. That's the next thing I want, is just like, can I just fly a DSLR around, please? Yeah, that's really all I care to do. But anyway, that's really cool. So we'll have so much drone licenses, and I've got a Mavic 2. It's not cool. The problem with having the big boy that I had before is it had what's called Spotlight Pro, which allows you to track and do cinematic stuff in ways that you just cannot do with any other drone. And when I'm thinking about filming planes, I'm like, ooh, I shouldn't have sold that. But anyway, so that's enough about drones. But that will be cool to get some of that. We'll get a lot of footage for sure.
I want to acknowledge too, one dull geek is here tonight as well. He's another one who's coming with us. Got a great midlife drone podcast. Yeah, he's another YouTube channel. Got a YouTube channel. Going to do some video with us too. So I think the plan is to share footage amongst ourselves. We'll figure out the logistics of that on the back end so that we can all kind of do our own edits from these, but also have lots of footage of each other and of different planes and of just, it should be a really good outcome from that.
Did one dull geek pass his check ride in between the last episode and this one? If not, congratulations. That's huge.
He did pass his check ride, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that at the hangout. Yeah. So,
I didn't know if we had mentioned that.
I don't think we've mentioned that.
Just want to give a shout out to somebody who passed their check ride and has been working really hard to do it. So that's awesome. And then also Bearded Aviator told me yesterday or day before that he just got his HP endorsement.
Nice.
So that's cool. So everybody's making stuff happen, which is great. I'm just going to try to get myself to the beach in one piece.
Yeah,
I'm studying instrument stuff, but it's a slow process.
It's going to be a great experience, I think, for everybody. I think we're going to all learn a ton. I mean, I just think some of the group flying and going to a couple of the places we're talking about going, there's just a lot of lessons here that I think we're all going to take away from it.
Yeah. So who has the knowledge for if we're going to be thinking about doing any formation, light formation work, who's in charge? Who's gonna teach us how to do that?
I think we're not. Were you on our call? We'll move on to some questions. We are not going to do any formation. We are going to fly a half mile minimum separation.
Okay.
We did debate it. And of course, I was back here going like, we could have a Zoom call with a couple of people and figure out how to do it. And but then I got talked out of it by some of the wiser folks in the group, which was basically like, that really probably deserves a proper formation training before you go up and just get super close, because a lot can happen pretty quick when you're that close to another airplane. And I think for the safety of all parties, we'll talk on a different frequency, together and maintain about a half mile. Once we might get out closer than that, but then we'll kind of spread out once we're off and make our way place to place. Anyway, yeah.
Just completed a flight review after 40 years of not flying. Congrats, old aviator.
Wow, that's incredible.
That's really great. And what's cool is the planes are all the same.
I mean, they fly the same for sure. And may still be the same planes, right? I mean,
right.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's jump into some topics that we have going on here. One is, I'm just going to go chronologically. Okay. Badger Pilot asked about, thought you did a podcast about editing videos. Can't find it on YouTube.
Can you throw it on the screen?
Oh, I guess I could do that. Still do that fancy thing, couldn't I? Does this still work?
Okay. Perfect.
I saw you did a live podcast about editing your videos, but I can't find it on YouTube or where I listen to my podcast. Am I losing my mind? No, you are halfway not losing your mind. We opted to not publish the audio version of it because it would have made zero sense to the audio only audience. I did think we still had the video published, but I will check on that afterwards. And
sometimes YouTube makes it hard to find things that had been a live podcast or a live stream.
Yeah.
Sometimes depending on how you have what you're using to look at YouTube, it will sort it strangely for you or sort those out as a default view. So maybe just search for Midlife Pilot Podcast, and then that will bring those up or something.
I'll see if I can find a link to here while we're talking, and I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, and that was a really good episode. I appreciate you doing all that, Chris, because that was a really helpful walkthrough, and I think it gave a lot of people a lot of knowledge and inspiration to do more for themselves in that way. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was fun. Jay Little asks, I'm going to begin ground school as a midlife trainee in the fall. How hard is it to go through flight training, and how difficult was the night training? You can start, and I'll answer afterwards if you want.
All right. Maybe I'll just hit the first part of it and you can hit the second. But, so to begin ground school as a midlife trainee, I guess I always have to throw this in there. Make sure you get your medical before you do absolutely anything, because it may be all for naught. The older that we are, the more weird things that can come up. So make sure you get your medical. But otherwise, in terms of just what it's like, I mean, people have different opinions about it. I definitely felt like my brain was not as malleable, perhaps, as it once was to some of this kind of book knowledge. All that being said, my will to live and to not kill other people was extremely motivating to get through all of it. And so that's how I got through it, is just really thinking about my deference to the art of aviation and the just out of respect for aviation itself. I need to give it everything I've got. And I think that channeling some of that helps when you have the inevitable frustrations. And, that's not a midlife thing. I think anybody can have that. It's hard to study anything sometimes. But anyway, so for me, it was just about, I used sporties and just went after it and found ways to make it hard on myself with the quizzes, and not just focusing on what I do know, but really drilling myself on the stuff that I don't know and all that, So I'd say that, midlife, you'll be fine because you have respect for it. It's not just something you're trying to do to get to the next thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I agree with you. I think that it's like anything else in life. I mean, to do it, it just takes effort, and you've got to kind of commit to it. Everybody's busy. We talk about this all the time, just in our lives in context, like, everyone is busy, right? I mean, I use it. It's an excuse for me. It's not I say it's an excuse. I use that a lot because I am busy. We have so many, we're crazy. Our family is crazy. We work full time. We own businesses. We have rentals. Fly airplanes, and we're just have a kid getting ready to graduate high school next year. It's that stage of life, right? But you find time to do the things that are meaningful to you, and you commit the time to do the things that are important. And so I also use sporties for some of the education part. I used Russ Still's Gold Seal, which I also really, really liked. And just that was the hardest part for me. I think was committing to the knowledge part, because the flying was fun. It was hard to commit to the knowledge part. As far as the second part of your question, which was about night flying, I don't like night flight still to this day, and I never will. I won't seek it out as like a thing that I want to do, except when it's necessary. I just think it's especially more so depending on where you live and what the terrain is like in your area. I don't like night flight because I'm convinced that something's going to happen in the plane. Everything's black, and it could be a hillside, or it could be who knows what it is. I just think there's more inherent danger in the night, and so I stay away from it. So, but as far as the training part, they were some of my favorite training flights because it is remarkably beautiful and peaceful, and it's almost easy to, and not in a dangerous way, but to just kind of disconnect and it is the most. There isn't anything like it. I mean, it was some of my favorite training that we did was the night flying, and
that's what I was going to say. It's almost like disassociative. It's such a strange sensation.
Yeah, because everybody's seen. I mean, you've seen pictures. How many times we've seen like satellite imagery and stuff from above? Like that's not that foreign to be like to see the Earth from the sky. But there's something about like. When it's black outside and you can see some lights, on the ground, and it is just, it's otherworldly almost. And so it's kind of cool, but no, I didn't have a hard time with it. It was actually some of my favorite lessons. I stay current, on my night landings, but that's about the extent that I fly from Fairmont to Clarksburg and land 3 times at night and come home. That's kind of my 7-mile flight is my plan.
Sorry, there's a massive storm coming through here right now, and it sounds like my porch back here is ending up in the neighbor's yard. I'm not quite sure, but Anyway, yeah, the winds are crazy here. Sorry about that. Yeah, I mean, the night flying, by the way, is I actually kind of want to challenge myself to do a little bit more of it, but I just can't imagine doing it when you're in the middle of actual nowhere. So for those that really take it on, kudos.
Yeah. One more thing on that, and we'll move on. We're going to take a trip to Cincinnati. My daughter has tickets to a concert that she wants to see. It actually got postponed. It was supposed to be this week, actually. But we're going to fly there and come back at night. And so one of the things between Cincinnati and here, it is reasonably barren. It's kind of there's not a lot to see in terms of horizon. And so that's going to be an interesting.
Got a road to follow.
There is a road that we're going to try to stay close to just for I just want to have some idea other than, instruments. And if it happens to be cloudy and not super moonlit, like where the ground is and where up is. So Josh says, I thought I was old till I trained in a Cessna older than me. Truth. Yeah. The planes I fly are 1965 and 1972. Let's see. Oh, here's a great question. I love this. From Josh again. Do you file VFR flight plans? I use flight following and have yet to file and activate a flight plan, and it feels like a big unknown to me still. It feels that way because they're trying so hard to not be antiquated and out of touch. But the reality, in my opinion, again, these are opinion based. These are not official statements that are being made on the Midlife Pilot podcast. I did for a while, and I still try to, but I don't anymore because I just think, because I'm like you, I never leave home without flight following. That's like pilot certificate, medical, and flight following are the three things I never leave home without. And I think it's exceptionally valuable, and really the services are different, but enough duplicative that if I'm talking to somebody that knows where I am, and if I have trouble, I can tell them where I am. I think that probably solves what I needed to solve for the flight or for the flight plan thing. When I did still do them, it's actually in one of my earlier solo cross country videos. I did one for fun where I filed one and opened it from the air with a flight service station, which was the craziest thing. I mean, that's the only time I've ever talked to flight service in the air, but it was kind of cool just to do it. My problem is I forget to close them when I land. Twice that's happened to me, and I've been called by flight service before they were going to say, and I missed the call once. Only like 10 minutes later did I see the number and had to frantically call back, and they said, dude, you just called in time. And it was close to sending people out because we were flying to a non-towered field, blah, blah. So I would say there's it's not a problem to open and do them. And there's easier ways to do them now. You can do them from ForeFlight, activate and close them from from ForeFlight. But I don't find tremendous value in them. Do you? I mean, is that pretty accurate, do you think?
Yeah, I guess the only caveat I would throw in there would be, and by the way, I swear I love Josh's questions because they're all in that weird sort of the fascia of aviation, right? Like there's all these kind of weird kind of customs versus best practices versus what's real versus what's not. What do people really do? There is a lot of fact and fiction to sort of sort out between your training and then what people do in the real world and then what decisions people make that are actually good and what things are actually not. With this one, I definitely do flight following any time that I can. And make sure I'm talking to somebody. The only caveat I think I could maybe throw at you about what you said is, it's just important to remember that they don't have to give you flight following. And I have definitely been just out of the blue, and I'm sure you have too, where they just call you up and go, hey, see you later. I don't have time for you.
Yeah, I've been dropped as well.
And so if you're halfway through a 100-mile cross country and they're just too busy to deal with you, and then you're in between them and the next center, you might end up kind of exposed in some way that you wouldn't necessarily be as exposed if you had a flight plan. But
that's true.
But generally speaking, it's I have not done one since I was a student pilot.
It's a good question, though.
Doesn't mean you shouldn't.
That's right. There's no harm in doing them. Just remember to close them, and they're really not much extra work. But if you're flight planning in ForeFlight already, I mean, it's about 3 clicks to file it, and then when you activate it, I always would sit. It was part of my run up actually, because I can't do it from my iPad. Okay, we're getting into the weeds here, but my iPad is not connected to the internet; it's connected to the panel, so I had to pull out my phone, activate it on my phone. But it'll update the time off. You activate it; it assumes your time off when you hit activate, so that's fine.
Even worse for me in the weeds, I don't have an iPhone, but I use ForeFlight on an iPad.
Oh, that is worse.
So I'm connected to my Stratus with the iPad. Then I have to turn on the mobile hotspot on my phone, then connect to the mobile hotspot, disconnect from the Stratus, send the flight plan, then reconnect to the Stratus, then go. And so that's another barrier. Yeah.
That's pain. Stinky Weasel 1, who is a friend of mine who is in my flying club here in Fairmont.
Great screen name.
Who actually had his check ride scheduled for this past Saturday, but was canceled. What would you recommend a student pilot private do to stay sharp when your check ride was canceled due to weather and the rescheduled date was, quote, when I can get to you? I do not intend to influence you, BG, but I will say this. I mentioned this to your instructor. In your specific case, I might consider another DPE because I know one in our area. But aside from that, just in terms of flying, I would say I would not stress about it. I would fly as normal a couple times a week, do just normal things that you would do normally. Just keep doing maneuvers. I mean, I don't think I haven't flown with you, but I think you're ready, obviously, or you wouldn't be signed off. I would just kind of stay proficient and do a few landings a week and do a couple of maneuvers and just stay sharp and stay on top of your I would be more worried honestly about the oral prep stuff and the stuff getting ready, because that's the kind of stuff that for me I had to kind of really work on in the days leading up. Of course, you could just refresh that again when you have a new scheduled date, I guess. But I don't know. I would just enjoy the extra flying time. I mean, these hours are hours, and they'll be in your logbook as hours after you've got your certificate anyway. So the only difference in these flights is you don't yet have your certificate and you can't take anybody with you. But I would just say enjoy the flights would be my take.
Yeah, I do like the idea though of if you do have another DPE that you can access. I mean, that just seems a little weird to get the when I can get to you. It's like, I don't know, look at your calendar and tell me when you can get to me. I don't know. So I wouldn't, maybe I'm more temperamental, but I wouldn't like that nebulous of a response for something that's so important. I would find somebody that can commit to a date, whatever it is, and go like that. But you know the situation better than I do and who's involved. So
yeah. One Dog Geek, did both of you think that the check ride was much easier than you thought it would be, or just me? 100% yes for me. Hands down, undoubtedly. It was, I had made it a way bigger life event in my head than it turned out to be. I was overstressed for undue reasons, and it was actually a really great experience. I remember I look back on it very fondly, and we had a great time. And I definitely overhyped myself with the mindset that the DP was going to be out to fail me, looking for a reason for me not to pass. When I just think in the reality of the case, in 95% of the time, that's not how it is. They want everybody to pass and are kind of there for you and as your advocate and to make sure you're safe. And no, it was 100% better than I thought it was going to be.
Mine was a little bit more harrowing and stressful. I mean, it was fine. It definitely was not as bad as I thought it would be. But I didn't anticipate that during the course of that the winds would be picking up and picking up and picking up, and having to do things that I had to do several things on my check ride that I just had never done before. So those were some curveballs, or not necessarily things I hadn't done before, but things that were done in a different way, just different enough to make it a little uneasy. Like the way that he did Unusual Attitudes with me, he had me disorient myself as opposed to just me sort of being like, okay, I'm going to wait for you to, do the little game and then I'll put it back. It was like he had me under the hood and then had me doing, all right, climbing right turn, more, less, this, whatever. It was actually a really good, so that's to the other point of it, which what you're talking about. It was actually enjoyable in the sense that it was actually a learning experience and a valuable experience. It wasn't just somebody trying to ruin my life. So anyway, it was good. Yeah.
Awesome. The Badger pilot says 25% of his hours his or her hours since my check ride have been at night. Very peaceful and fits my schedule better. It is. I mean, I'm not arguing with the peacefulness of the night flying. I might be more apt in Nebraska maybe than where I am in West Virginia, where, finding a flat spot is pretty hard. So it's
also landing at your airport is not.
It's not easy at night.
It's not easy during the day, right? So
not easy, but I enjoy, other than the known risk increase. I don't, it's not like I dislike it. I mean, I do like it's less bumpy. The winds are dead. It's not as hot. There's a lot of good things about flying at night for sure. Oh, here you go, Brian. This one's like custom built for you from Jacob Black. Just got my certificate less than a year ago. Fairly comfortable planning day trips, but would be interested in hearing how you plan multiple day trips for weather as a VFR pilot. Process and tools used.
Yeah, I'm definitely in the same boat. I think that at least. We'll see how it goes for me as I progress, but I think the plan has been to just logically build and not stack things up on yourself. Take a 1 hour cross country, then take a 2 hour cross country. And, I kind of, in terms of planning and tools, I mean, I use all the same tools anybody else does as far as, ForeFlight or aviationweather.gov or, looking out the window or, all those things. I don't use any special tools. And I haven't really, I think that what I've been doing is leaning so hard into the idea that I'm only going to fly when it's really good weather. And I'm starting to, and we've talked about this, right? Like once you're at 100 hours, the hours between say 100 and 150 are massive. Like your confidence, your just skill level and comfort with a lot of things goes up. You're not having to think about everything as an independent action anymore. It all becomes kind of like driving a car a little bit more, less overwhelming. And the newness wears off a little bit in a good way. And so by virtue of that, now I feel like I have more room to start introducing more challenging weather situations in a VFR context. And so that's what this trip is. So, I've got, and I think, and this is actually something I've been doing some writing about recently, but there's just something about the idea of, even though I know your question specifically about weather, but really what it comes down to is you have to have an out. You have to leave yourself some sort of an out. If that is a no-go, be open to that. If that's you get stuck halfway, you get stuck halfway. Even with this trip that we're doing, I have sort of just some decisions to make about, do I sort of do the super safe thing and kind of go around the southern part of the Smokies and then up and then over to the beach? Or do I just, like I'm just going to beeline it. I'll just follow I-40 and I'll be going through 6,000 feet elevation mountains and whatnot, but that's not crazy. It's not like, the Sierra Nevadas or something. Calm down about it. But I'm also thinking like, well, what if there is weather? I'm already at that much more of a deficit. So I relate it to my flight planning very much in that way. And I have different routes planned. So I've already got like if I have what, I already have imagined where weather might be and already planned fully my diversions. So I've gone to extra links. So I think it's really just about planning, and I don't use any special tools, but I am stretching myself a little bit more. Some people are maybe braver than I am. I just really don't want to do any scud running. I really don't want to get into any kind of a situation, but I do know if I do, I'm 100% confident in just doing a 180 or whatever. I got a wide diversion, whatever. It's fine.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff. I don't have anything to add to that. I haven't done any multi-day, long trips like that yet. So I don't really have a lot of insight into that, but, I think you are wise, and I think you're on the right track for those things. David Moscardelli, this is a great question. What are your personal minimums for your upcoming night flight? And I'll just be honest and say that I haven't quantified them, really differentiated between night and day. And to be honest, I probably should go back and revisit. I haven't really modified my written down minimums since I became a private pilot. And I certainly would do that now after just, 100 more hours of flying time. Like, I've learned a lot and been in a lot more conditions where I can honestly say without hesitancy that my minimums were super conservative, unnecessarily conservative. I guess the differences for night for me would be, I wouldn't mess around with any close ceilings. And certainly if it was cold and if I was going to be anywhere near where I thought I could have an ice situation. So I think ceilings would probably be the biggest change for me. That would probably be the biggest thing I would look at in terms of changing my minimums for night versus day, right? I mean, what else would be my factor? Visibility, you could say, is important, but also it's important in the day too. So I'm not sure that I would make much of at least with the ceilings would be the most important because it's a lot easier to like stay below the cloud layers when you can see them, rather than just end up in them by surprise. So I think if I was going to modify a minimum for night, it would be ceilings. Do
you also have to consider oxygen?
Not at the altitudes I'll be at. What do they say for night?
5,000.
Yeah, I mean, okay. I don't know if I buy that. I definitely, for a 45-minute flight or whatever it is.
I think it's just more about the efficacy of your vision.
I get it. Yeah. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't for that trip. Mm-hmm. Think about that. But yes, that is a good point. They do say that, I don't know. I know a lot of people who've flown a lot at night, at and above 5,000.
Yeah. It's hard not to where you are.
Yeah. I mean, really, really. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. How often do you talk to flight service in the air? This is going to be super easy to answer. I'd like to get comfortable doing it so that when I need weather updates, it's not foreign to me. I can. The only time I've ever talked to flight service on the air was the one time I opened a flight plan in the air. You always hear on a lot of the ATISs, hazardous weather information available on flight service frequencies. So if you need some additional information, you can get it. But the other great thing that ADSBN has done for us in the airplane is, real-time data weather. I mean, real-time. Do not misread me. I don't want to start that train of you shouldn't rely on the radar. It's 5 minutes delayed. Okay, that's fine. Reasonably real-time weather for planning in the air. So I think less and less that's becoming relevant as well. But the flight service stuff is cool. Like, they are there. There are people there to help you with really whatever you need to ask them about. So, but I've never talked to flight service about weather.
Have you ever been vectored around weather via flight following?
I don't think so.
I mean, there's also that layer too, right? Like they're watching you if you're on flight following, and you can't rely on them, but that's another layer to get around weather.
Let's see. Josh's check ride, he said his was the worst day of flying for him and his biggest nightmare, but it still passed somehow, which I just think is a testament to how well our instructors prepared us, to the standards that they hold us to. I think we're our own worst critics. And it's drilled into us from the beginning, right? Like, fight for that center line, nail your touchdown point, get your speeds right. Like, it's a constant, thing, but I think it just goes to show you that they're not trying to let us just squeak by and, scrape by the skin of our teeth. So I think often because what do we really have? Student pilots, what do we have to gauge it against? We don't have anything to gauge this performance against. So I think what we think is terrible flying a lot of times is really average. And I think that just really speaks to our instructors.
After my check ride, I was sort of hungry for a debrief. I really wanted this expert sort of debrief, somebody finally different telling me what they saw. And I thought during the check ride that my soft field takeoff was one of the worst things that I'd ever done. And I just asked the DP straight up at the end of it. I said, I'm just curious, like, what did you think that maybe I did particularly well and particularly not well, and what can I work on? And he's like, he had to really think about it, because I guess it was just such a beige table of monotony and boredom for him, to even consider, like, I'm all worried about all the details. And he's just like, yeah, I got to go get lunch. But he did say, I was really concerned about my soft field. And he said, I thought your soft field really stood out. Like, that was a really good takeoff, and really, like, you really, I was like, okay, that's it. I give up. We have no idea how to judge ourselves in the moment of what's actually going on.
That's right. Old Aviator asks, what are your personal limitations for a crosswind component on takeoffs and landings? Again, I probably should review mine, because I actually do not recall what is written down for me on check ride day. It is certainly more than that now. I mean, I can think of a number of days recently in both planes, truthfully, the Cessna and the 235, where they've been 10 knots, probably crosswind component or greater, at least gusts of them, maybe not consistent, that have been okay. I came home from a flight. I think I published the video. Oh yeah, it was one of my landings videos. I was doing patterns in Clarksburg, and they were picking up. And I think the last one was probably getting close to like 12 knots crosswind. And I did one more landing and went home from that. But I can guarantee you, check ride day and like the 6 months after, there would have been a 0% chance on some of those days that I would have been flying. And some of that was just me and my, lack of, I don't know, if confidence or just whatever, but they've changed. So I would say probably, I don't know that I would intentionally seek out days that were much more than that, but I would certainly fly in it if it was, if there was a valid reason to do it.
I think there's a huge factor though, when you get after you get your license and then you start flying, and then you're still in a student mindset, and you find there's a really good crosswind practice day, and you take advantage of it, and you just go out. For me, after I did that, even just one time where I was really focused on, I want to, work on crosswind landings, and I found the day that was right up at my minimums, which I think at that point was maybe 8 or 9, and consistent, not all over the place, reasonably consistent, and just burned it out in the pattern doing that. And then after that, I was like, okay, because there's still like, when you haven't done it a lot by yourself, it was as somebody else as a safety net or whatever. It just, there's a whole other fold of experience that you have to get right after you get your license. In my experience, it was like, I'm just going to stay in the training mindset, and I'm not going to take anything for granted, because now I got to do all this stuff when it's showtime for myself. Right. And you do that with one of your friends in the plane, it puts a different spin of pressure on everything. So yeah, that's a good thing to have those minimums, but they do quickly evolve after training.
For sure. Yeah. And I would say this too. The only thing I would say about crosswinds, the 2 times I've been the scaredest, both times in a crosswind situation, both times were in the Cessna, and it was because I was not appropriately using aileron correction when I wasn't in the air. Before and after landing, and by that, and in 2 different ways. One is after I landed touchdown, I was still going very fast and was in too big a hurry to put a bunch of correction in, and tipped into the wind, popped a wheelie on one side into the wind and had to straighten it back out. The other time was the opposite, and it was on takeoff when I didn't have enough in, and I, without intending to lift off the ground, the upwind wing lifted up. So that's no joke. I mean, that stuff is the kind of stuff that can get you off center line and get you weird and get you in trouble. So like, it's not so much for me about finding the alignment with the center line and the nose alignment, like on landing. It's as much about when you're at a slightly higher speed rolling on the runway to like, don't get complacent. They know they teach you that all the time, but just keep flying the airplane even when it's on the ground, because that's when you get, things can get squirrely on you there on the ground, and that's just as bad for the airplane, maybe a little bit less bad for you if something happens, but
and
definitely
taxing
bad
too.
for the airplane. I mean, it's exactly, and taxing too. So on the ground is.
I've actually caught myself before being really good about crosswind correction after I land, and then for some reason I forget, and then now I'm turning. And so
it's amazing how much difference that makes, even in like steerability of the plane, right? To have it correctly in, because it will push you in a way that does not logically make sense. It's like, why am I going this way? This is, Hey, in the interest of safety, I want to bring this up. Kevin Webb, who's a CFII here, says he can attest to flying at higher altitudes at night on long cross country, because he and Sam flew our 235 back from Florida when we bought it. It'll sneak up on you and start affecting your abilities, just as they say. So in the interest of full, taking somebody smarter than mine's word on it, don't let me poo-poo that idea of needing some supplemental oxygen or being careful at higher altitudes at night. Kevin obviously is more experienced than me and says that indeed, as they say.
I'm curious of Kevin, when you say affecting your abilities, is it just all the normal sort of hypoxic type things, or is it something different? I'm curious about the vision part of it, or what is it actually at lower altitudes because your eyes, I don't know. I'm just curious about that. But anyway, maybe we'll do a night flight episode. That might be a good.
Yeah, that would be fun.
Yeah.
All right. We got about 15 minutes left, so we'll keep kind of working through these. Badger pilot, who I need to apologize for. I don't know why I said Nebraska earlier when referring to obviously the Wisconsin Badgers, but he called me out on that in the chat, so I apologize. Says, I use my crosswind minimum based on forecast with a little wiggle room, which is smart. So if they're higher than forecast, I can still do it and feel reasonably comfortable and safe. That is smart.
Oh, here's a good question about money, no object. What's your dream aircraft you would love to own?
Oh man, I mean,
do you see that one in the?
Yeah, it's way further down the list from where I was.
Okay.
Yeah, from Jay Little. That's a good question.
Money's no object.
Oh, I feel
like there has to be some constraint here, right?
Because I don't know. I got to be honest. I mean, I used to think I wanted like bigger, faster. Like I was in love with, and not that these are big money planes, because really Moonies aren't that expensive, but I was convinced I wanted like a M20J or, something a little faster and blah, blah. I am having so much more fun back in that 172 again. I know I keep saying that. I'm just in this stage of my life right now. I can't even think much past where I'm at in these little 235 and this 172. I'm just so content with these airplanes right now. It's hard for me to even think beyond that.
Yeah, and then for me, I want a Cessna 177B. I don't want the retractable gear. I know you'll get a little faster, but it's just more stuff to keep track of. But if money's no object, okay, fine, I'll do the RG. But I want a Cardinal because to me, they're just, even just from a design history standpoint, I just think they're such fascinating planes and such awesome planes. But just the idea that back then Cessna was like, engineers, we've been running the 172 game for a long time. Take all the lessons learned, make the perfect plane. And they did it. And they kind of screwed it up. Then they kind of fixed it. And then they kind of had to walk away from it because people would not trust it more than the 172. But I mean, it's the interior and the way that the doors open, the lack of a wing strut. I want to do a lot of, I haven't even gotten into this yet, but I want to be able to do more, sort of aerial photography and things with myself or others. And, the view and just just everything about the Cardinal to me seems like the perfect plane. So I would just get one that's, tricked out.
disclaimer before we answer this question again, that this is not a legal podcast or we're not accountants. So any advice that I give now is not advice at all, just opinion. Is having a small single engine plane useful for business? I run a small food manufacturing company, and that's from Foodhead. I will say, I'll answer this because I have some insight into this. You can certainly fly places to conduct business, as long as the flying isn't your business. So if you have to go somewhere and meet with a manufacturer, meet with a customer, or do these things, no problem with that whatsoever. It's, in fact, I flew for work. That's a flight I didn't even talk about the other day. I went to Newport News and back last week for work. So yes. What I will say is that in recent years, and it's not just related to airplanes, IRS rules have also changed on what is deductible for business, what business travel is deductible, and it's not in our favor as business travelers. So you may be surprised if you're, don't expect that you're going to necessarily be able to deduct 100% of the cost of flying an airplane to go somewhere for business. Talk to your accountant on the specifics about those things. But in terms of FAA legality, anything that you would be already commuting to do, you can commute by airplane. It's as long as your business isn't, you're not making the money for flying the airplane. You can do it if it's incidental to your business. So it's actually, depending on your geography and the range that you're traveling, if it's kind of a regional thing, I think that's when it gets into the real sweet spot. Like the trip I had to take would have been a 7-hour drive. It was an hour and 55-minute flight. So there's a ton of efficiency. It saved an extra travel day. I mean, there's a lot of real perks for it, I would say. That's my take. My non-legal advice, non-accounting advice.
I'm going to just tell anybody that challenges me. Chris said, this guy Chris told me on the internet.
I'd stay away from that. I'm scrolling down here. One Dog Geek. Didn't you just mock 172 in your most recent video? I mean, I did complain potentially about its capabilities, but then it was the only plane of our two that was able to get us where we needed to go on that day. So I feel like I owe it an apology and maybe dinner. Kevin Webb clearing up some of the effects of high altitude at night. They say it affects everyone differently. For us, we experienced some difficulty tracking a course and flying in a straight line. We were at 8,500 feet, I believe. We eventually realized and descended, and all was fine. So good on you for recognizing the signs.
Yeah. So I think, have we missed anything? Maybe we can just spend the last couple of minutes plugging and wrapping it up.
Sure.
And then I can get some dinner, and that'll be sweet. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that seems reasonable. What else? I guess the reality is we've got a couple big things coming up. I know I've said this before. I'm not making any commitments because I'm terrible at this. Getting back on track. I have so much content now finally built up, and feels like March Madness is over for me. I was literally living in a hotel for 16 nights in a row. And so it's good to get back in the swing, and hopefully getting back to the every 2-week video content posting on the YouTube channel. Brian's way outpacing me on content. If you're not, his link is in all of my videos now in the descriptions on the Midlife Pilot page. You should definitely subscribe to his YouTube channel. His content is, we're both flying very similar planes and routes, but the content is dramatically different style and just kind of approach to what we're making. And which is another thing I love about YouTube is there's room for even though we're doing roughly the same thing, the content is so different. And I love that. And so definitely subscribe and check that out. If you haven't, Brian also launched his Patreon page as well. We'll put a link to that.
I love how we're both subscribers to each other's Patreon.
Yeah, it's like we're just kind of splitting it. It's kind of like maybe we should just both not. We could just the same. Anyway, yeah.
We should just gracefully bow out of each other's Patreons.
But do check out. Are you just patreon.com/Siskind? Siskind. Siskind, and patreon.com/midlifepilot is my Patreon. If you want to go to those, there are perks that are different on both. And I know Brian's been posting some stuff. I saw some cool photos and some cool other stuff that's come across the last couple of days. So he's been super active on his. What else?
So let's see. 2 weeks from now is the next one of these, and that'll be basically, that'll be interesting because we're going to be able to actually have weather, outlook. It's going to start really getting down to the wire for our big mega trip. It's going to be so cool to see David and Mark and all these people.
Ben,
it's just going to be Ben. Yeah, it's just going to be such an awesome experience. No matter how it all goes, we'll all get there. We'll all get back. And something will happen that's fun and flying when we're there, and that's all that really matters. I'm super stoked.
Very cool. It should be a good time. Well, we appreciate all you guys too. I see all the comments, all the thanks in here, and really, this is our favorite part of the podcast. If we could do every one without structure and just questions, it'd be great. But like everything else in life, there are other criteria at play, including algorithms and other things. And we have content to cover, and we want to have some guests on. We've been talking with some people, so stick around. We'll do this every other Wednesday night. If you can come back, please do. We love having you here and interacting with everyone, and certainly appreciate some of you guys have been around for all of them, and we really, really appreciate you all being here. And to our audience on our podcast subscribers, of course. It's so easy to forget about the audio portion when we're doing this live with all these guys, but that's obviously a big part of this too. And so thanks for being here every week and listening in your car and wherever else,
or wherever else you might,
your Peloton, in your airplane, wherever.
Oh yeah. That's pretty funny. Videos every 2 hours. No, I'm not doing every 2 hours, Mark, but hey, I'll see what I can do. But yeah, thanks again, everybody. It's super fun to just have a hang like this. I really appreciate it.
We will talk to you guys in a couple weeks. Take care.